We've all seen the term travel ban pop up in the news, right? It's a phrase that gets thrown around a lot, and it's one of the most serious tools a government has. But what does it really mean when a country decides to do that? Well, today we're going to break it all down.
Okay, so let's get right into it. You've heard of a travel ban for sure. But what about a travel warning? They sound kind of similar, but trust me, the difference between them is massive. And you got to understand this distinction because it's key to seeing how these policies really affect people's lives.
So, first things first, let's build our foundation and get the vocabulary straight. What is the actual meaningful difference between a ban and a warning?
Okay, so a travel warning, or an advisory as it's often called, is basically like a yield sign on the highway. The government is waving a flag saying, hey, just so you know, there's some stuff going on here, maybe some political unrest, maybe something else. They're telling you to be careful. But, and this is the key, the choice to go is still yours. It is advice, not a command.
Now, a travel ban, that is a completely different story. This is the big red stop sign. It's not a suggestion, it's a legally binding order. It means do not go. Airlines literally cannot sell you a ticket to that country. And if you try to find a way around it, you could face some serious penalties like fines or even worse. It's a hard stop, period.
So, when you boil it all down, this is the core difference. A warning is designed to inform your decision. A ban makes the decision for you. One is basically a heads up, and the other is an order that comes with real legal teeth.
And get this, even with the warnings, it's not just a simple, be careful. The US State Department has this whole 4-level system. It goes all the way from level 1, which is just exercise normal precautions, up to level 4, do not travel. This gives you a much clearer idea of the risks, especially when there isn't a full-blown, legally binding ban in place.
Okay, so that leads to the big question, right? Why would a government use such a powerful and restrictive tool? I mean, what kind of situation justifies telling citizens they absolutely cannot go somewhere?
You know, when you peel back all the layers of politics and policy, it almost always comes down to two big things: national security and public health. Either they're trying to prevent threats from entering the country, or they're trying to stop a public health crisis like a pandemic from getting worse.
All right, so let's stop talking theory and look at a real-world case study. We're going to zoom in on a pretty recent and highly debated example that was all about national security. And what's so wild is just how much these things can change. This particular ban didn't just appear one day and stay the same. It started in January 2017, then it was revised, challenged in court, replaced, and even expanded over several years. Countries were added to the list, others were taken off. It was constantly in flux until it was finally revoked in 2021.
And here you can really see how dynamic these lists were. At different times, they included nations from the Middle East, Africa, Asia, and even South America. It just goes to show you how these policies are directly tied to what's happening in the world and what a government's foreign policy goals are at that moment.
Okay, so that's the national security angle. But remember that other big reason we talked about? Public health? Well, the COVID-19 pandemic gave us the mother of all case studies on that one, on a truly global scale.
Think about this for a second. In just the first few weeks of the pandemic, at least 45 countries had already put some form of travel restrictions in place. And that was just the beginning. Pretty soon, those targeted restrictions turned into sweeping global bans, and international travel basically ground to a halt.
And, you know, the science on this is really interesting. A major study published in the journal Science back in 2020 found that these measures are most powerful right at the very beginning of an outbreak. Why? Because they can delay the initial spread and buy hospitals and health systems precious time to get ready. But, and this is a really big but, there's a flip side. Once the virus is already spreading widely inside a country, well, the bans start to lose their effectiveness. As the UK's health secretary pointed out when they got rid of their red list for the Omicron variant, once you have widespread community transmission, a travel ban just isn't the right tool for the job anymore. So we've talked policy, we talked science, but what does all of this actually feel like on the ground? What are the real, tangible consequences for businesses and for individuals when a travel ban suddenly drops? For a business, a sudden travel ban is like a bomb going off. It sets off this incredible domino effect. All of a sudden, your employees from other countries might not be able to renew their visas. Your hiring plans for international talent, they just collapse overnight. And your risk of failing a compliance audit goes through the roof. It's just a massive, immediate shock to the system.
So, what's a company to do? Well, the experts basically lay out a 5-step emergency plan. First, you've got to figure out who's actually affected. Then, you stop all non-essential travel for them immediately. Double and triple check all your compliance paperwork, have a backup plan for staffing, and start rethinking your entire strategy for the future. It's all about damage control.
And that brings us to the fundamental question at the heart of all this, doesn't it? In a world that's more connected than ever, how do we find the right balance? The balance between protecting national security, safeguarding public health, and preserving the fundamental freedom to move around our world. There are no easy answers, and figuring it out is one of the greatest challenges we face today.